Bonjour tout le monde. A warm welcome to everyone here this morning, the most exciting morning ever. It's my very great pleasure to welcome the Prime Minister, Ms. Ferrell, and members of the Alberta Carpenters Union, and all of our other special guests that are here today. You know, in the last few days, our Liberal caucus met here in Edmonton to talk about our plan to build Canada strong. At the core of that plan is empowering Canadians to think big and build now. The rapidly shifting global landscape is pushing us to act decisively and to focus on what we can control, building strong communities and making smart investments that return real results. Since we took office, we've been really focused on the economy, and in the first month, we passed legislation to reduce internal trade barriers. And since then, we've launched the Major Projects Office so that we can get big things built again in Alberta, across the prairies, and across the country. It's no coincidence that this new office is located right here in Alberta, and I'm so thrilled to see our province positioned at the heart of our government's vision. The office will help streamline the process of getting projects built, creating certainty and efficiency. L'annonce aujourd'hui sera la première qu'une série d'étapes importantes pour le Bureau des grands projets et ouvre la voie pour un Canada plus prospère et plus fort. I'd like to welcome now to the podium someone who spent years in the energy industry leading large, complex companies. She's highly regarded as one of Canada's most accomplished business leaders, and she's the new CEO of the Major Projects Office. Please welcome Dawn Ferrell.
Hello, and thank you, Mr. Olszewski. It's a pleasure to be here in Edmonton today, my home province. It is a distinct privilege to serve all Canadians in the role of CEO of the Major Projects Office. It's daunting and exciting, and it is so very personal to me. To have an opportunity at this important time to impact our skills as a country, to execute projects that are bold, sustainable, and economic, and that fit our collective values as Canadians is truly an honor. This is really a defining moment for Canada. And the work of the office is being defined as we speak. My vision is a small team with a big reach. To be successful, we know that Canadians everywhere will step forward, work in teams, find solutions, and solve problems. To get to one project, one review, one decision in a 2-year time frame will set Canada apart globally and will attract enormous inflows of capital. To be able to meet this time frame without cutting corners and within our values as Canadians is a giant puzzle to solve. I now truly have the very best job in the whole country. We are hitting the ground running and on our front foot. Yesterday, the government announced the members of the Indigenous Advisory Council who will help ensure that partnership and Indigenous economic participation are embedded in our work. Today, Prime Minister Carney will announce the first set of projects and strategies to focus our work. We currently have a dedicated team of first-class professionals helping us set up the work plans and finding the people to form the teams. It will take some time for us to hit our pace, but with all the help that is pouring in from people everywhere across Canada, we will be successful and out front. And we are sure to finish this race in record time. Today, Prime Minister Carney has some great news to share on our first steps. Imagine that. I'm 11 days into the job, and I already have a plan. It doesn't really get any better than that. So it is my pleasure to pass the floor to Prime Minister Carney.
Good morning. Thank you. Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you very much, Dawn, for that introduction, for bringing your leadership to this task. Thank you, Eleanor, for helping to build Alberta and Canada strong. We're incredibly grateful to be hosted today by the Alberta Carpenters Training Centre. The women and men with us today will help build Canada strong. And I just want to say as well, Finn Johnson, Kim Letwin, and all the team here at the Union of Building Canada Local 1325, thank you for the fantastic work you're doing here, and by extension at job sites across Edmonton, across the country. Also, I want to take a moment to salute the union leaders, the great union leaders from across this country, from across the trades, who are here, who will build Canada. It's always great to be back in the city that raised me, a place that I learned my values, values shared by the people behind me, values of hard work, values of sticking together, solidarity, and the value of ambition. That's why I came back here to Edmonton in early January to launch my leadership, because Alberta has always been home to builders, to entrepreneurs, and to innovators. The people we need now as a country more than ever to build the strongest economy in the G7. And Canada's new government's core mission, our mandate, is to empower Canadians by building Canada's economic strengths. That's how, in uncertain times, we will create greater certainty, greater security, and greater prosperity for all Canadians. It's how we will create economic opportunities that help Canadians not just manage through this crisis. We will manage through this crisis. Our goal is to prosper from it. Now, I want to continue to be clear with Canadians that the path ahead will not always be easy, because what's happening now in the global economy is not a transition, it is a rupture. The United States is fundamentally and rapidly transforming all of its trading relationships, and the effects are both immediate and profound. They're closing markets, disrupting supply chains, halting investment, and pushing up unemployment. Canadians are over the shock, but we must always remember the lessons. We have to look out for ourselves, and we have to take care of each other. As Minister Olszewski said a moment ago, we know we can't control what other nations do. So we're focused on what we can control, building our strength right here at home. And the initiatives that we'll announce today will help transform Canada's economy from one that had become too reliant on a single trading partner to an economy that's resilient and dynamic, an economy built for Canadian workers and their families on the strong foundations of our industries and new, diverse trading partners. That's how we'll build Canada strong. Now, Canada has a long history, a long, proud history of building. In our earliest years, we were unified by a national railway. In the decade after the Second World War, we built hundreds of thousands of homes for returning heroes and their families. In the decade before I was born, tens of thousands of blasters, steel workers, road workers, carpenters started the construction of the Trans-Canada Highway. In just 5 years, during the 1950s, the St-Laurent Seaway was brought to life, with 7 locks stretching over 300 kilometers, linking the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean. Since then, it's transported more than 3 billion tons of cargo. A few years later, Canada built Expo 67, the World's Fair, which went from concept to completion in just 4 years. The point of these examples is that we used to build big things in this country, and we used to build them quickly. It's time to get back at it, and it's time to get on with it. That starts with getting out of the way. For too long, the construction of major infrastructure in Canada has been stalled by arduous and inefficient approval processes. Uncertainty, red tape, duplication, complicated, complicated review processes have held back and curbed investment. One of many studies has shown that the regulatory requirements in Canada have increased by more than 40% since 2006. And that's been suppressing investment growth by 9%. Right now, to receive an approval, major projects must undergo numerous reviews and assessments that often happen one after the other, instead of running in parallel. For too long, when federal agencies have examined a project, their immediate question has been, why? That changes now. From now on, Canada's new government starts by asking ourselves for major projects, how? How can we do it bigger? How can we do it faster? Nous avons fait campagne en promettant d'accélérer la réalisation des grands projets. Nous travaillons avec détermination et conviction pour réaliser ce mandat. En juin dernier, nous avons fait adopter la loi visant à bâtir le Canada, qui permet au gouvernement fédéral d'accélérer la réalisation de projets d'intérêt national. Over the summer, you just heard, we opened the new Major Projects Office and headquartered it right here in Alberta. It's a single point of contact to get nation-building projects built faster. And we appointed the incredibly hard-working Dawn Ferrell to lead this new office. She brings 4 decades of experience in energy and infrastructure, and a proven ability and enthusiasm, best job in the country, proven enthusiasm to get things done. The Major Projects Office will help to structure and coordinate financing for our major projects. And it will accelerate those projects by creating a single set of conditions and reducing the approval timelines for those projects to a maximum of 2 years. Now, part of changing how we build is to build in true partnership with Indigenous peoples. And to begin that, this summer I hosted 3 summits to engage First Nations, Inuit, and Métis rights holders on their priorities, and to explore the opportunities for equity ownership and broader economic benefits from this generational transformation in the Canadian economy. Yesterday, we announced the membership of the Indigenous Advisory Council. This is comprised of representatives from First Nations, Inuit, Métis, and modern treaty and self-governing partners. The members bring deep expertise in economic participation, impact assessments, and UNDRIP. And the Council will ensure that projects move forward in true partnership with Indigenous peoples. Bâtir un Canada fort veut dire bâtir ensemble. Soyons clairs. Nous allons nous employer à bâtir ce que les gens souhaitent, plutôt que nous disputer ce qu'ils rejettent. To be in Canada's national interest, a major project must strengthen Canada's autonomy, our resilience, and our security. It must have clear benefits for Canadians. It must have a high likelihood of being completed. It must contribute to clean growth in Canada's climate goals. And it must advance the interests of Indigenous peoples. We'll advance projects that turbocharge and connect our regional economies, as well as our economy to the world. Projects that diversify our products and markets. Projects that create hundreds of thousands of high-paying careers, good union careers for our workers. Everywhere from trades to the technology. Now, another crucial point. These projects will be at the heart of our new comprehensive Buy Canadian policy. Because to strengthen Canada's independence, our resilience, our security, we will build with Canadian steel, Canadian lumber, Canadian aluminum, and by Canadian tradespeople and engineers. We will be our own best customer. So today, as you know, Canada's new government is announcing the first set of projects that we believe are both in Canada's national interests and are feasible to be built. The proponents behind the first tranche of these projects have already done much of the hard work. They've undertaken already extensive consultations with Indigenous peoples, consultations that meet the standards of existing legislation. They've worked extensively with provincial and territorial governments and local authorities and already meet many of the necessary regulatory standards. The government is referring them to the Major Projects Office to be shepherded across the finish line. The office will help these proponents achieve any remaining regulatory and permitting approvals and, importantly, secure the necessary financing. Critically, the office will recommend to the federal government the best course to complete each project approval quickly, so proponents can make smart investment decisions. This is the first tranche of projects. We expect the second tranche of projects to be announced by the Grey Cup. So these first projects are, and I'll go them in order. First, LNG Canada Phase 2. Its expansion in northern British Columbia. This will directly help transform our country into an energy superpower. This project will double LNG Canada's production capacity and make it the second largest liquefied natural gas facility of its kind in the world. It will diversify our trading partners, help meet global demand for secure, low-carbon energy, and support tens of thousands of new high-paying careers. And leveraging Canada's sustainable advantage, its emissions are projected to be 35% lower than the world's best-performing LNG facilities and 60% lower than the global average. Second project is the Darlington New Nuclear Phase 1. This project will make Canada the first G7 country to have an operational small modular nuclear reactor. It will drive $500 million annually, every year, into Ontario's nuclear supply chain. Once complete, Darlington's first of 4 planned SMR units will provide reliable, affordable, clean power to 300,000 homes, while sustaining 3,700 jobs every year over the next 65 years. And all of that in addition to 18,000 skilled trade jobs during construction. At its full potential, Darlington's SMRs will provide enough electricity to reliably and safely power 1.2 million homes, more than the total number of households in Edmonton and Calgary combined. And by moving early and at scale, we can take advantage of Canadian expertise to build value chains here at home, maximizing the number of jobs for our skilled trades and engineers. Troisièmement, le terminal du contre-cœur. Les terminaux et les ports d'exportation sont des projets d'intérêt national qui fournissent les infrastructures nécessaires pour diversifier le commerce, ouvrir de nouveaux marchés et de réduire les coûts pour les entreprises canadiennes. C'est pourquoi je demande au Bureau des grands projets de collaborer avec le port de Montréal afin de déterminer comment faire avancer les travaux d'aménagement portuaire au terminal de contre-cœur. Ce projet permettra de créer 5 000 emplois pendant la construction et 1 000 emplois permanents pendant l'exploitation, générant jusqu'à 140 millions de dollars par année en valeur commerciale ajoutée dans tout le Canada. Et surtout, ce projet permettra à nos entreprises et nos industries d'exporter davantage vers de nouveaux marchés. We know that critical minerals and mining are industries of national interest in and of themselves because they can reinforce our prosperity, build our security, diversify our markets, and advance reconciliation. And to these ends, we are referring the McKinvena Bay Foreign Copper Mine in east central Saskatchewan and the Red Chris Copper and Gold Mine in northwestern BC. Foran will strengthen Canada's position as a global supplier of critical minerals for clean energy, advanced manufacturing, and modern infrastructure. It'll create 400 jobs, boost the local economies in Saskatchewan and Quebec, where the copper will be smelted, and is expected to be the first net zero copper project in Canada. In northwestern BC, the Red Chris Copper and Gold Mine will be another carbon-neutral copper mine, increasing Canada's copper production by more than 15%. It'll employ around 1,500 workers at peak during construction and 800 during operations. It will reduce greenhouse gas emissions by over 70%. Working in close collaboration with the Tahltan Nation, it's an important step in reconciliation and further developing the potential of northern BC. And it's part of a bigger package, because relatedly, we're also tasking the office to begin close consideration of the proposed new Northwest Critical Conservation Corridor. This is an initiative that presents multiple opportunities for critical minerals development and clean power transmission, including potential interties to the Yukon and Alberta. It's a project, it's an initiative that has the prospect of significant Indigenous project leadership, while creating a potential conservation area the size of Greece. Combined, these 5 projects will generate more than $60 billion for the Canadian economy and create tens of thousands of high-paying careers for our workers. But as I said at the outset, and I will continue to stress, these 5 projects are just the beginning. Canada's new government also believes that there are several strategies that can be truly transformative for our country. Transformative because they help to connect our regions, because they help unlock our potential across a range of products and markets and technologies. But these strategies are also at an earlier stage, and they require further development. We want to accelerate that development. So today I'm asking Dawn's team at the Major Project Office to create a business development unit to work with proponents on these transformative strategies to assess how quickly we can transform their potential into reality. And I want to go through these strategies. First, the Major Projects Office will dedicate itself to the development of regulations, financing, structure, and value chains to accelerate Canada's overall production and processing of highly strategic critical minerals. Opportunities include Ontario's Ring of Fire, the mineral-rich Slave geological area in the Northwest Territories, and the Labrador Trough, La Fosse du Labrador, shared by Quebec and Labrador. From first-mile infrastructure that surfaces these opportunities from our land to last-mile connections that link these projects to reliable long-term purchasers around the world, we can build the bridge from mine to magnet, turning raw potential into engines of resilient industry, of clean power, and enhanced security for our country. Secondly, the Major Projects Office will examine how to advance large-scale clean power with the Wind West Atlantic Energy. This Nova Scotia-based project will transform Atlantic Canada's energy supply, electricity supply, and create enormous opportunities for new industries and export markets. It has the full potential to produce 60 gigawatts of clean electricity, equivalent to over 1/4 of Canada's entire demand. It's part of a broader Energy East partnership amongst the Atlantic provinces. And with Wind West, this partnership could include important interties between New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Newfoundland. Transmission cables between PEI and New Brunswick and Newfoundland. We could develop the next phase of Labrador's work with Churchill Falls and Gull Island. Third, we're also referring the Pathways or Pathways Plus project to the Major Projects Office. Pathways is an Alberta-based carbon capture, utilization and storage project which could achieve enormous emissions reductions, taking the equivalent of the emissions of 90% of all the cars and trucks in Alberta off the road, all while facilitating new growth in the oil sands. By pairing investments in Pathways with a new pipeline to a variety of markets. Pathways represents the opportunity to create a major new industry in carbon capture and storage, and an essential technology for global decarbonization. Our plan for major nation-building projects is anchored in new corridors that connect our economy, enhance our security, and build transportation networks across this vast country and to the wider world. And that's why we're referring the Arctic Economic and Security Corridor, a new Arctic port and all-weather road and port infrastructure that will link Nunavut, Northwest Territories, and the Prairie provinces. The Arctic Corridor will open up promising advanced stage mineral projects through critical links from port to port to port. And with increasingly open Arctic waters, rapid advances in cyber, artificial intelligence, and quantum, paired with advanced missile capacities of our adversaries, we can no longer rely on our geography to protect us. We must fortify Canada's sovereignty and our security in the Arctic. We'll do that in two ways. By creating a new port at Grays Bay and unlocking our resources, we can assert our economic sovereignty while building our defenses. Fifth, we are referring Port of Churchill Plus as part of a larger vision to unlock Indigenous-owned energy and transportation corridor in Manitoba. With proposals for port upgrades, upgrades to rail, an energy corridor, and marine ice-breaking capability, the port would offer an alternative to West and East Coast routes, reduce Canada's reliance on a single energy corridor, and generate more than $1 billion annually in economic activity. This project would be developed in close cooperation with Manitoba's new Crown Indigenous Corporation. Sixièmement, j'ai aussi demandé au Bureau des grands projets de travailler avec la ministre des Transports pour qu'on puisse commencer la construction d'Alto, le réseau ferroviaire à grande vitesse, d'ici 4 ans au lieu de 8 ans. Ce premier train à grande vitesse au Canada va pouvoir atteindre une vitesse de 300 km/h. Les voyageurs pourront faire Montréal-Toronto en moins 3 heures. C'est aussi un projet qui créera 51 000 emplois pendant les travaux de construction et injecter jusqu'à 35 milliards de dollars dans notre PIB, avec un objectif de réduction de 25 millions de tonnes d'émissions. Finally, we will ask the Major Projects Office to begin assisting in the development of a Canadian sovereign cloud. This would build compute capacity and data centers that we need to underpin Canada's competitiveness, to protect our security, and to boost our independence and sovereignty. This will give Canada independent control over advanced computing power, while reinforcing our leadership in AI and quantum. Taken together, these projects can deliver transformational benefits to Canadians, driving growth in jobs and incomes for decades, diversifying our energy sources and our markets, connecting our country, and connecting our country with the world. Since being elected, we have moved at pace to pass this legislation, to establish the Major Projects Office, to identify the first tranche of projects and these strategies. We've started as we mean to go on, and we are just beginning. Because we know, Canadians know, that we can give ourselves far more than any foreign government can ever take away, and that we will build the brighter future for a confident Canada. Nous allons bâtir de grandes choses pour les Canadiens et Canadiennes, d'une ampleur et à une vitesse jamais vue. Et ce n'est qu'un début. Throughout our history, Canadians have turned challenges into opportunities. In fact, Canada itself is a project. It's a project built and improved by the strength of its people. We've connected a landmass that spans almost 5,000 kilometers. We've built ports that unlock trade with new markets and reliable partners across the world's oceans. We built new seaways to realize the potential of our Great Lakes economy. We've transformed Canada into a strong nation, a nation whose best chapters are still to be written. We've built big things before as Canadians, and we will again. Now, this is a moment of big disruption and profound change. We bear the same responsibilities as those became before us, and we should hold the same ambitions. To become the strongest economy in the G7, Canada must act now, invest now, precisely when it's hard. And by moving forward today, we won't just catalyze new ports, energy corridors, other engines of progress. We'll also open the bounds of Canada's imagination about the future that we can build for each other. Dawn told me just the other day that she's already received, and you've been there 11 days, so this would have been 8 days in, you'd already received hundreds of emails filled with ideas of future projects that could rise to these standards. Her inbox is proof that Canada is ready. Nous établissons une stratégie économique pour faire passer le Canada de la dépendance à la résilience et de l'incertitude à la prospérité. En construisant des grandes choses, nous allons nous donner les moyens de nos ambitions. Nous allons nous dépasser, rêver à nouveau, et ainsi être amenés à développer et construire des projets encore plus grands. To finish, yesterday I had the privilege, going down memory lane, returning to St. Rose, the school in Edmonton I attended as a child. When I started there, in grade 1, the tar sands, as they were then known, were a curiosity to most. They were a curiosity to most but a few builders and dreamers. But by the time I finished in grade 9, those tar sands had been transformed into the oil sands, transformed into one of Canada's largest industries through the brilliance of our scientists, the drive of our entrepreneurs, the support of governments, above all by the dedication of our skilled workers. And today's students at St. Rose, like their peers across the country, are full of hope, ideas, and energy for Canada's future. Now, we're beginning to realize that promise, taking control of our future by thinking big, by acting fast, and by building Canada strong. Thank you very much.
First question, CBC. Good morning, Prime Minister. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News. The first 5 projects you have identified have already begun and are quite advanced. So what does green lighting them change? What does shepherding them across the line, as you say, actually mean?
Thanks for the question. And that's part of the reason why we're able to be in a position to identify them as the federal government and passed to the projects office to shepherd them forward. It depends on the project, but in some cases there are the last stage of regulatory approvals. In most cases, there is some aspect of the financing or support packages for the projects that remain to be determined. We'll take the advice of the Major Projects Office to make those determinations. I would say that in all these cases, the consultations and the engagement with Indigenous peoples is very advanced, so the support is there with Indigenous partners. Much of the other work has been done. There's a few things to be done to shepherd across the line, and it's the intention, as told to me by Dawn and her team, to move quickly so that these projects can move forward.
Thank you. Prochaine question. Next question.
Abigail Beeman, CTV News. You said that the Expo 67 was done in 4 years, so I'll give you 5. In 5 years, how many of these projects do you expect to be completed, and what does success mean to you?
Success means several things. Success means that there are many, many more projects that have been spurred, that are moving through the process. The bit that we can and let me be absolutely clear, there are a number of other projects around the country that have been proposed that we are in the process, more specifically the Major Projects Office will be in the process of evaluating. That's why we're confident that there'll be another tranche of the Grey Cup, certainly another one by the Stanley Cup, another one by the World Cup, and we can force it like that. So that's the first thing. So part of the success, Abigail, is that there's a series of projects that have been approved and moved forward, and they are diverse. They're in different parts of the country, they're in different sectors of the economy, they go to different international partners, and they build that independence and resilience for our country. That's the first thing. The second is, yes, some of those projects, shovels will be in the ground, they'll be moving forward. I'll take one project where what we're shifting is the timeline when those shovels start, which is the high-speed rail, where the process of specifying routes and approvals and doing the engineering was slated to take 8 years. We think we can do it in 4. We certainly can organize the government's component of that within 4, now that we have the authorities that we do. That's what we're going to do. So in that case, the test on the TGV will be the start of the actual construction of the project within your 5-year horizon. So, major increase in construction, enormous expansion in the range of projects, certain projects underway, but in all cases, determination of what's greenlit and what's not. In other words, what's going forward and what's not, made there. And if I can add one other thing, Abigail, which is hard to measure, but we'll feel it, is a changed attitude within this country and outside this country in the ability of Canada to control our destiny, to build, and to build big. And that's starting now, and with every month, every batch of projects and every movement forward, it'll become clearer and clearer, and that, I'm confident, we'll achieve.
Prochaine question. Next question.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Carney, Laurence Martin de Radio-Canada. Il n'y a pas d'oléoduc sur la liste. Daniel Smith a dit que c'était à cause du cadre réglementaire actuel, par exemple, de lois comme C-48, C-69. Est-ce que vous êtes prêt à les modifier, ces lois, ou à les annuler carrément pour qu'il y ait des projets de pipeline bâtis au Canada?
OK. En ce qui concerne le Premier ministre Smith, nous avons eu une réunion très longue et très constructive hier. C'est une réunion dans une série de réunions entre elle et moi et nos fonctionnaires. Premier point. Deuxièmement, et je vais utiliser les mots de Madame la Première ministre à Saskatoon quand elle a dit on a la possibilité d'une grande bargain, en anglais, un grand accord en effet, et c'est-à-dire qu'une pipeline, un oléoduc, avec des grands projets de décarbonisation. Alors, à ce moment-ci, on commence avec le grand projet de décarbonisation, c'est le stockage de carbone de Pathways. Et ce projet-ci a la possibilité de réduire le montant de carbone à peu près de 6 000 tonnes en total. C'est comme 80% des autos en Alberta. Ça crée la possibilité d'avoir un oléoduc avec le pétrole décarbonisé. OK? Et le travail le bureau de grands projets, en même temps, crée la possibilité de harmoniser les réglementations pour ce oléoduc. Alors, on a beaucoup de travail à faire, mais il y a un processus très constructif et il y a la possibilité d'avoir la combinaison des deux projets, oui.
Mais juste sur ma question, est-ce que C-48 et C-69 sont des problèmes pour vous, des enjeux pour vous?
Non. Dans un mot, non. Dans le contexte d'une grande bargain, non. C'est pas un problème. C'est pas un problème pour nous.
Next question. Prochaine question.
In English, to summarize, I had a very good meeting with the Premier yesterday, part of a series of meetings between our officials that have been ongoing. We've made a lot of progress on a number of issues. I'm confident that we'll continue to make progress in the coming weeks ahead. I drew on the observation of the characterization of the Premier back in Saskatoon in June that there is a grand bargain which pairs Pathways, a major decarbonization project, with a new pipeline. What's happening here today is we are saying that we are going to accelerate work on Pathways. We see this as a potentially viable project. The Major Project Office will continue to do the work. That creates the opportunity for the plus. The plus is potential pipeline to a variety of potential markets. There isn't currently a proponent of a pipeline, a private sector proponent of a pipeline. So there's a variety of potential markets. Ms. Martin's second part of the question related to regulation and existing regulation. We have the ability under C5, under the Building Canada Act, to take into account the national interest, which would include decarbonization with Pathways, economic benefits, diversifying of markets, jobs, other aspects, in order to make adjustments to those regulations in the national interest. So that's what's being explored. There's more work to be done in those regards, but as I said, and I wouldn't read anything more than the adjective into it. We're making progress. It's constructive, and we're focusing. Final point, as the federal government or through the Major Projects Office, we're focusing on what we can control, which is the regulatory authorities, the financing, the other aspects of the Pathways project, which is a necessary condition to unlock those pipelines.
Mackenzie Gray, Global News. We'll pick up on the grand bargain. A necessary condition. So that means that there'll be no oil pipeline that's brought forward to the Major Projects Office unless there's a decarbonization plan like Pathways.
Well, I'd answer the question this way, which is we're governed by a law of Canada. And in that law is to work for projects that advance our independence, our autonomy, have economic benefits for Canadians, advance our climate objectives, partnership with Indigenous peoples. Those elements are there. So projects need to recognize and advance those. It is no accident that the projects, for example, in the mining sector or the LNG projects that we're referring, the ones we're referring directly to the Major Project Office, are low carbon. Best in class, low carbon in the case of the copper projects, and virtually best in class with respect to LNG too. So the expectation for us to use these authorities with conventional energy is that it's going to be lower carbon conventional energy. Again, Pathways creates the opportunity of that. It's well understood, very clear discussions in and around it. And part of the reason for that is it's going to be necessary longer term for economic competitiveness. You know, we have the lowest risk, I'll stick with oil, we have the lowest risk oil in the world. We know exactly where it is. We know how to mine it and develop it. The marginal costs are amongst the lowest costs in the world, and our engineers keep improving on those costs. We need to move towards it being one of the lowest carbon sources of oil in the world. And I think the other thing I would say, just to provide a bit of a bigger context for this, and this is something that Dawn and subsequent times can speak to with far more expertise, but we also have to consider how our oil is being used. So for example, our TMX oil, a portion of our TMX oil, the refining, is for naphtha, which is being used to develop the EV supply chain in Asia. So we're looking at what are the impacts, the total impacts of these projects and how they satisfy the goals of the legislation. Thank you.
Next question.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Premier ministre. Émilie Bergeron, la presse canadienne. Dans votre caucus, vous avez dit que les projets sélectionnés feront avancer les objectifs climatiques du Canada. Vous avez donné quelques exemples ciblés, mais si on tient compte de chacun de ces projets, de la totalité de l'empreinte carbone de ces projets, en quoi, selon vous, ça fera avancer les objectifs climatiques? Et pouvez-vous juste clarifier pour 2030 et 2035 les objectifs de réduction des gaz à effet de serre en vertu de l'accord de Paris? Êtes-vous résolu à les respecter?
Je suis résolu à atteindre des résultats, pas avoir des objectifs. Je suis résolu afin d'avoir des vrais investissements, pas nécessairement des prohibitions. Ça, c'est des interdictions, pardon, des interdictions. C'est-à-dire, OK, par exemple, dans le total de tous les projets, le montant d'investissement dans l'énergie propre, y compris le stockage de carbone, c'est plus de, c'est 50% de plus de l'investissement dans les minéraux critiques, le gaz naturel, par exemple. Alors, on va investir plus dans le secteur d'énergie propre que dans le secteur énergie conventionnelle, avec la tranche de projet et les stratégies que je viens d'annoncer. Deuxième point. Et chaque fois, nous examinons un projet, nous mettons l'accent sur l'impact sur l'environnement. Alors, le monde, afin d'avoir la transition climatique, il faut utiliser la cuivre. Mais ça vaut mieux d'avoir des projets pour la cuivre net zero. Et nous allons le faire avec ce projet aujourd'hui.
Thank you. Next question. Sorry, in the effort of time, we're going to go to the next question.
Des résultats, pas des objectifs.
Thank you. Glenn?
Glenn McGregor, City News. Prime Minister, I'm going to ask you to shift topics here. I don't know if you saw any of the pharmacare demonstrations outside the caucus site this week. These people, many of them living with diabetes, are really concerned that you're not committed to following through on this by expanding the existing agreements you have with 3 provinces and 1 territory to the rest of the country. Could you talk about whether or not you want to keep that program going and whether you see a future of expanding it to cover other medications?
Thank you, Glenn. We're committed to keeping the project, process going, pharmacare for diabetes and for birth control, and achieving the agreements with the outstanding provinces, if I can put it that way, as quickly and as equitably as possible. One of the reasons, it's going to be a challenging budget in many respects. We have to take some tough decisions. These are tough times. We have to take some tough decisions. But one of the core reasons why we're taking tough decisions is for affordability and security for Canadians. So that means childcare. I know we don't have a childcare agreement yet in Alberta, but that means childcare. That means supporting healthcare in this country, pharmacare, dental care, things that make a huge difference to many people's lives. We have to be in control of federal spending so we can continue to support those programs. Those are clear commitments, and we will keep them.
Next question, sorry. Next
Expansion is c'est une autre question. Sorry, a moment's fine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Madam.
I'm not going to ask that question. Stephanie Lennox, the Globe and Mail. I'm going to go back to the Today announcement. I wonder if you could talk to us about the money. Prime Minister, who's paying for these? Are any of these projects getting new federal money? How will this financing be set up?
Well, thank you very much for that. This is an incredibly important question. Obviously, it's an incredibly important question, but I'm glad you're putting it on the table. First thing to recognize is the first contribution of the federal government is to be much more efficient and effective in the regulatory approvals and other approvals that are necessary without changing the standards, to be clear, meeting our standards, but getting much more effective. That doesn't cost much money. It's a process issue. It's an issue of us being organized better, working more effectively, sharing information, working in parallel. It costs an enormous amount of money for the private sector proponents of these projects, the current situation where they don't know how long it's going to last, and they spend constant years and years. So we get out of the way. We put one example on that. The TGV, the high-speed rail, pardon me, high-speed rail. Each year, we're looking to move from 8-year process to get the final siting approvals to 4. Each of those years that we save saves up to $2 billion for the projects. It's an enormous amount of money. Enormous amount of money that is better spent building a climate-friendly, efficient transportation network that links a big part of our country. Okay, that's the first part. Second, we expect with these projects, I'll make one exception to this, we expect with the vast majority of these projects that federal dollars will catalyze many multiples of private dollars. Okay, you look at LNG Canada, LNG Canada 2. Tim, total capital cost is 32 billion. 32, yeah, I was going to, okay, 30 billion, $32 billion. There is relatively minor, relative to that $30 billion capital cost, federal incentives that we're discussing as part of that, and we'll take the advice of Dawn and her team on what makes sense, what's necessary. By the way, when you're having those discussions, it's great to have someone who spent 4 decades basically doing that and understanding the economics of it. So in that case, it's a very modest amount of federal money relative to the overall. Now I'm going to give you the other end of the spectrum, and I should probably finish the answer here, but the other end of the spectrum is some of these port infrastructures. You think of the Arctic Economic Corridor. So what we're talking about there, it's an initiative of multiple governments, started at the Nunavut government, but also Northwest Territories and some of the Prairie provinces. The anchor there is a new dual-use port at Grays Bay and an associated road that would go Grays Bay and Nunavut. Dual use because it would also have military applications, security applications, as well as commercial. You know, that's kind of the federal government's job, or largely the federal government's job in terms of that port. And so yes, there will be some contributions, and there's ways that we can optimize, certainly when the commercial returns are coming from that. Once the private side of that port's up and running, we can get some cash flows from that and monetize. But the military side of that, which also helps unlock this, and some of the other components of that, there'll be more federal dollars involved in that. Exactly the number of federal dollars, the reason I'm not quoting you a figure is we're referring it because we want to work through all of that, and then we want to look at how we can get private contributions through what is unlocked by it. I'll give you, remember I said that was my final example? I'm going to run on. That's a comma after that, because I make a point that is true for both the TGV, high-speed rail, and these corridors. We have the potential to create we help create the possibility of these, but they unlock economic opportunity. And one of the ways you help finance is you use the economic opportunity that's unlocked, that a portion of that goes to the overall project. So one of the ways that high-speed rail and other things are financed in Europe is the property development that is created at the nodes of the train. It becomes very attractive to be attractive, live in Ottawa, to commute to Montreal. It's attractive, just to be clear, it's attractive to live in Ottawa for many reasons, particularly Nepean. But we have the ability to organize, to use those multiple aspects of financing in order to do it. So, but we'll be very clear about the dollars, but the overall answer, it's a bit late, is many multiples of private dollars for the public dollars, because that's how we're getting the true benefit.
Next question, please. Sir.
Le dernière partie, en ce qui concerne le TGV, ou en somme, en ce qui concerne le financement des grands projets, l'idée et la réalité va être que c'est $1 fédéral, $1 public, va être multiplié par 4, 5 ou plus dollars privés. Okay? Et il y a des exemples que, en effet, la grande contribution du gouvernement fédéral est d'accélérer l'approbation des projets. En effet. Merci.
Next question, Brian.
Prime Minister Brian Platt with Bloomberg. I wanted to ask you about tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. We know this is of huge concern to Saskatchewan. Your parliamentary secretary went with a Saskatchewan delegation to China recently. Yes. It's under review right now. Is your government open to reducing that 100% tariff on Chinese EVs, and how would that affect trade talks with the U.S.?
So just to be clear, what's under review is, I think you know, but for others, is the EV mandate. We've suspended it for 2026, and we're reviewing that overall approach. We're reviewing that approach in the context of clean fuel standards, in the context of the economic environment, and yes, in the context of the trade environment as well. That review literally just started. We're in the first week of a 60-day review, so I don't want to prejudice it or presuppose the outcome of that. With respect to the visit of Premier Mo, welcome visit of Premier Mo and my parliamentary secretary Cody Blois to China last few days. Very welcome, constructive visit. It's part of a series of increased engagement with the Chinese government. I spoke to the Prime Minister at the start of the summer. Our foreign ministers have met on several occasions. Our trade minister has been there. We expect to accelerate and intensify. We're looking to accelerate and intensify those engagement. And of course, the discussions with China will relate to our agricultural products, our fisheries products, their manufacturing products, including vehicles, as part of a broader discussion, but it's too early to say.
We'll have time for one last question. Rafi?
Good morning, Prime Minister. Rafi Vijaykanyan, CBC. These future development projects, how much more difficult do you expect them to be to get to the approval process than the ones that are already in your top 5, and why? Yeah,
well, I'll answer it this way. I suspect that, I don't just suspect, I'm highly confident that there will be some new projects that will come in when we're in Winnipeg, or just before going to Winnipeg for the Grey Cup. There'll be some new projects that come in that will rise to that level of the 5, the projects that are substantially advanced, or that the Major Project Office thinks that they can pick up and move them to be to the finish line. There's more of those that are close, but not quite there at this point. But I think partly by seeing the scale of our ambition, the speed with which we're moving, how we're being resourced, that the work gets done, and there'll be more that come there. So that's the first thing. The second, with respect to those, if I can use my words, so we're talking about the same thing, this transformative strategies, Arctic economic pathways is 2 examples. Look, there's varying degrees of work that need to be done. There's a lot more that needs to be done on the Arctic Economic and Security Corridor. Then, look, there's a lot of decisions to be made around pathways, but we pretty much know what the decisions are. So it's a question of will and engagement and timing and the plus, actually, I think, to be frank around that. So it depends. It depends on the strategy, it depends on the project. But what we're absolutely clear about is we will dedicate the resources with the intention of moving as rapidly as possible. And that the definition of fast has changed dramatically. This country is open for business. We're moving, we're building big projects for Canadians, for the people behind me, and the union leaders represent people across, good union workers across the country, skilled trade people, our engineers. We are building at scale, at speed, for Canadians for decades.
Thank you. Thank you. This puts an end to our press conference.
Merci.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.